Good evening. My name is Tanya Bowers, and I would like to call the City of Pasco Planning Commission meeting to order. I would like to welcome all those in attendance this evening and ask you to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To begin tonight's meeting, I would like to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Tanya Bowers,
Present.
Joseph Campos, Paul Mendes,
Present.
Kim Lerman,
Present.
Abel Campos, Isaac Merrim,
Present.
Rachel Teal,
Present.
Jay Handler, Jerry Cochran.
Present.
Madam Chair, there are 6 members present and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. The Planning Commission is an advisory board made up of volunteers appointed by the City Council. The purpose of the Planning Commission is to provide recommendations to City Council regarding changes to the city's comprehensive plan, land use updates, block grant allocations, and zoning code. The Planning Commission is tasked with considering the long-term growth and development of the community, the impact of land use decisions on community, livability, economic opportunity, housing affordability, public services, and the environment. I would like to remind the audience tonight's proceedings are being broadcast live on the City of Pasco's Facebook page and on Charter Cable PSC channel 191, and will be rebroadcast several times during next month. The meeting is also being recorded so you can watch it on the City of Pasco's website, which is pasco-wa.gov. Click on the Video on Demand link and make your selection there. There are copies of the meeting agenda tonight available online on the City of Pasco website, so you may follow along with the meeting. At this time, I would like to ask the audience that you mute your microphones to prevent interruptions during our meeting. For those present this evening, when you are given the opportunity to address the commission, please raise your hand so that we know that you would like to address the commission. Speak clearly into the microphone and state your name and city of address for our records. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I need to remind the audience and the Planning Commission that Washington state law requires public meetings like the one being held this evening not only be fair, but also appear to be fair. In addition, Washington state law prohibits Planning Commission members from participating in discussions on decisions in which the member may have a direct interest or may be either benefited or harmed by the Planning Commission's decision. An objection to any Planning Commission member hearing any matter on tonight's agenda needs to be aired at this time, or it will be waived. First, are there any Planning Commission members who have a declaration at this time regarding any of the items on the agenda? Let the record show that no one declared. Second, is anyone in the audience this evening, would they object to any Planning Commission member hearing any of the items on the agenda? Let the record show that no one declared. We as a Planning Commission need and value your input. It helps us to understand the issues more clearly and to make better recommendations to City Council. Furthermore, in many cases, your input here at the Planning Commission meeting is your only opportunity to get the facts and opinions placed into the official record the City Council will use to make its decision. I encourage you to take full advantage of this opportunity. The next item is the approval of the meeting minutes from the Thursday, August 19th, 2021 meeting. These meeting minutes were mailed out to the commissioners ahead of time. I trust you had an opportunity to take a look at them. I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Cochran, and I move to approve the minutes from Thursday, August 19th.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second?
This is Commissioner Myra, my second.
Terrific. It's been moved by Commissioner Cochran and seconded by Commissioner Myron. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So let the record show that the meeting minutes were unanimously approved. The next item on the agenda is we don't have any old business, so we're going to move ahead to public hearings. And the first item is a code amendment. This is regarding street connectivity, master file CA 2019-013. And we will start our discussion with comments from city staff.
Thank you and good evening, members of the Planning Commission. You may remember this proposal, which went through lengthy public hearings throughout most of 2019 and the 2020 year. In short, this is a brief update from staff's recent efforts and some next steps. So a summary is that the Planning Commission recommended to Council in October of 2020 a proposal to revise Title 21 with regards to the lots and blocks layout to address transportation in the city of Pasco, specifically to meet a variety of comprehensive plan goals, but specifically the adoption of council goals in 2020, which was the completion of a transportation system master plan and the utilization of its recommendations to develop policies, regulations, programs, and projects that provide for greater connectivity, strategic investment, mobility, multimodal systems, accessibility, efficiency, and safety. The proposal that was recommended from the Planning Commission significantly revised the lots and blocks chapter of Title 21 with regards to creating a maximum block length, block perimeter with provisions for connection to adjacent lands, and non-motorized access ways. There was also some refinements made to intersection spacing and the cul-de-sac provisions. Following that recommendation from the Planning Commission last October, staff shared and presented to the Pasco City Council on 3 different occasions, March 22nd, May 10th, and August 23rd of this year. Now, during those presentations, staff again re-provided to council all of the items, the data, the information, and the public comment, both that in favor of and that in opposed to the proposed recommendation. And at the August 23rd meeting, staff presented 2 new alternatives for council to consider. And while those alternatives deviate from the original proposal from Planning Commission, and even what was recommended out of the initial TS and the Transportation System Master Plan, it was staff's belief that these 2 new alternatives, which were included in the staff report, I believe on page 2, still met our objective to create a fully functional transportation system here in the city of Pasco. However, because these 2 alternatives were not vetted by the Planning Commission, it was identified as to be in everyone's best interest if this item was to be re-evaluated by the Planning Commission. In addition to furthering collaborative environment with all of our stakeholders from the housing and transportation segments of our community. So with that, it's really a short update. There was no presentation today. However, staff did want to come back to the Planning Commission as this was a fairly a significant item that the Planning Commission acted on, and it's been 11 months since it's been here. And because of that time, we wanted to come back with some due diligence and identify that it was going to be reevaluated. And our recommendation is to simply continue the public hearing. However, we are interested in any comments, questions, or concerns that the Planning Commission may have based on tonight's staff report or since the time of its recommendation last October. So with that, I'll conclude our brief report and presentation this evening, but again, certainly welcome any comments from the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I know we have had a great deal of discussion and presentation on this particular item. These are new additions, alternatives that have been presented. So we do want to make sure we give them our fair attention. So commissioners, do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Gonzalez?
So this is Commissioner Cochran. I just want to clarify, the two new alternatives were presented based on feedback and research and analysis you did between the time we approved in October and it got in front of the council. Is that how those two new alternatives kind of surfaced? And then since they said, well, you didn't really vet those with Planning Commission, they said kick it back so they can review this. Is that kind of the nutshell what happened? And what were the drivers behind the new alternatives? Was it feedback from housing development community or things like that, or?
Yeah, exactly. The feedback we received certainly was persistent, and we certainly want to acknowledge the comments and concerns raised to staff. So in an effort to try to collaborate further, we did develop two new proposals or alternatives, again, which we believe still align with the intent of council goals and comprehensive plan policies, but it would be important for us to note that they do deviate from what the standard best practice would allude to. And because they were not vetted by the Planning Commission at the August 23rd meeting, staff, along with Pasco City Manager Dave Zabel, did recommend that rather than having an open debate about transportation connectivity standards at the City Council level, that it would be best culminated at the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Okay, so are you going to discuss or do any sort of presentation on the alternatives since it's the first time that we're actually seeing them?
Not tonight. I can certainly describe them if that would be of interest. The primary intent of tonight's report was to give an update since it's been about a year. We have had numerous meetings with the Home Builders Association of the Tri-Cities, and on Tuesday of this week, we also met with the Tri-City Association of Realtors. Those meetings are expected to continue. Staff is working with a few representatives from each group to try to identify some possible solutions. Whatever those solutions may be, I would again reiterate that staff's intent is to bring back to the Planning Commission and eventually Council a proposal that best aligns with transportation planning best practices and council goals.
Great, that's very helpful. And I see the recommendation is to move to continue the public hearing.
Correct.
Do you need some? We don't need that. Okay. Awesome. I mean, someone could sit here and just for performance's sake.
Point of order, since this is a public hearing, are there any folks here to talk about this at this time, or nobody came for this meeting?
No one's at the meeting. My
Okay.
apologies. I didn't know you couldn't see that. Good point, Commissioner Cochran. No one is in the room. So with that, we will just
No problem. Thank you.
continue till the next meeting. All right. So our next agenda item is actually a workshop, and this is around our corner lot fencing. And Mr. Hattori, will you be sharing about that?
Yes, I will be.
Terrific.
And Commission, I'm just going to preface this very quickly. Mr. Hattori was here a month ago, and with this same issue, the presentation tonight is very, very similar to what was presented last month. And what we're hoping from the Commission is to get a better sense of possible directions on on possible code amendments or not that might be affecting how we treat corner lots and fencing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. White, Mr. Hattori.
Thank you and good evening, members of the Planning Commission. So I do have the presentation for the corner lot fencing. It will be very similar to the one from last month, but I thought it would be good to go over it again given the complexity of some of the issues here. So starting off, we have PMC 25-180-050-1C. This is the provision for fencing. This code says that the height of fences, walls, and hedges shall be limited to 3.5 feet within the front yard area of residentially zoned lots, retail, business, and office zone lots, provided when two contiguous corner lots or two corner lots separated only by an alley right-of-way form the entire frontage between parallel or nearly parallel streets. The height of fences, walls, and hedges shall be limited to 6 feet within the front yard adjacent to the side street. Except where the front door of a house faces the side street, all fences greater than 3.5 feet in height must be set back to the building line of the house facing the side street. So that's a lot of text. So we do have some diagrams to show what this means and what that looks like. So this is when two dwellings face, are contiguous and do not share, one does not access the side street. I apologize. So in this instance, fencing would be allowed to be placed out to the property line, the green area, up to 6 feet in height. And this can only be accomplished when the two dwellings form the entire frontage between the two streets. And one house does not access that side street. Now, if we go to the next slide, this is what that looks like in practice.
We're not seeing the slides on here, sorry.
Oh, that's important to note. Mr. Funfar? We are adjusting.
Go down, right there.
There we go.
Thanks.
Thank you for saying something.
Madam Chair, this was the first slide shown, or second slide shown, sorry.
Okay.
And then the real life example is now the third slide, so now we're up to date.
Right. So in this slide, we can see that both of the dwellings face the side streets. Neither of the dwelling accesses the shared flanking street. In this case, because there is no concern about one of the houses facing the side street, they are allowed to have that fence set all the way out to their property line, extending all the way down the sidewalk. Now, the second provision of the code, which is on the next slide. This is the instance where one of the dwellings does access the side street. The way the code is written is such that the fencing greater than 3.5 feet would have to be set back to the building line of the house facing the side street. So in this case, the house that is facing the street to the left cannot extend their fence out all the way to their property line, that green area, like the first image. They would have to have it at least set back to the building line of their neighbor's property, the house that accesses the shared flanking street. And so this, in other cases as well, the house on the right can be set back further than the house on the left. which creates instances where 6-foot fencing must be set back to portions of the building where there may be doors or windows. And this is where a lot of the complaints have been lodged against staff regarding overreach about fencing requirements. And due to this, we've done a lot of analysis into our code and how it affects properties, and we've come up with a few options. Moving to the next slide first, we can see a real-life example of what this looks like. So the house to the bottom, because they don't form that frontage, their house has to be set back to the building line of the house behind it. So their fence would never be allowed to extend to the street to the right.
And I'm sorry, the brown part is the lawn? Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So the first option that we have would be to allow 6-foot fencing out to the property line regardless of which way the neighboring dwelling faces. And this would effectively create instances where there may be some vision concerns for the neighboring dwelling. And we can see those concerns in the next slide. So this is a real-life example here in Pasco where one of the houses does access the flanking side street. We can see that on the left image. And there's a small gap between that dwelling and the fence. And so that doesn't really provide a lot of vision when, say, the homeowner will be backing out. And if you look at the image to the right, this is what someone going down the street would see. And it's more of a beneficial image. You're seeing it from the traffic heading away from the site. So if you're on the right and you're a pedestrian or you're a car driving down that road, you wouldn't see that car until it's already out in the street. And the homeowner, likewise, wouldn't see you going down the street until they're already over the sidewalk and into the street. And so another option that we've looked into would be to allow 6-foot fencing at least out to the building line of the dwelling. And so this would take away the dependency on where the neighboring dwelling is placed. So the dwelling, if you look at this diagram, you can see that this fence wouldn't need to be set back to the building line of the dwelling on the right, which would effectively make it so that fence wouldn't have any instances where it would be placed in front of, say, a window or a door. Yeah.
Do you have a picture?
Yep. And then the last option that we have would be to not make any code amendments to our current fence provisions. If we are able to adhere to lots and block standards moving forward, we believe that we can mitigate a lot of the issues that we're seeing with corner lot fencing currently. A lot of the issues that we're seeing right now were created, say, in the last 10 years, and we've made a lot of improvements to our reviews and our lots and blocks code. And so what staff is looking for from this point is any recommendations or direction for these options or anything that we can look into further. And with that, I'd like to open up for any questions or comments I may be able to answer.
Great. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Myram.
Please, Commissioner Myram.
I was just curious if staff would just sort of illustrate maybe an example of how option 3 is being used today, and how that might work as a way to prevent these sorts of issues down the road. Has just the review process changed and improved?
That would be correct. When we're reviewing preliminary plats and proposals for subdivisions, we're taking a better look at the street layouts and making sure it conforms to all of our provisions. And we're also taking a better consideration for
potential fences and driveways as well. A lot of the lots that we're seeing these issues with are on streets that wind in ways they shouldn't, or are longer than they should be, and create these instances where houses are required to face a side street when that shouldn't have been an option at all.
Great, thanks. So it sounds like a lot of these things are being headed off already by staff. Is there any drawback that you see to amending the code that might create complication or restriction to any developments, and maybe it's simpler to keep it in staff's hands? Any thoughts on that?
I apologize, I didn't catch that last part.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going to ask if you had any feeling about whether amending the code would potentially be restrictive down the road, or if this kind of analysis can be done in-house with staff oversight.
Right. I don't think amending the code would create more restriction on the lots. I think that if we were to make an amendment, it would be more lenient. But as it currently stands with the current provisions of the code, we wouldn't make it any more difficult for fencing on any future lots.
Great. Thank you very much.
So,
Commissioner Cochran, can you summarize, I mean, if you just left the code alone and then just did better permitting review process, is the current code just that for fences that they're, 6 foot tall in the front and sides and 3.5 in the rear, or I'm sorry, 3.5 in the front, or is it more complex than that? And, so that's my first part of the question is what are the kind of summary of the current standards?
That would be correct. Fencing greater than...
Unless it's in front, you can have a 6 foot up to the property line, but if it's a front, it can only be 3.5.
Yeah, that would be correct. So
Okay.
fences greater than 3.5 feet have to be set back at least to the building line of the home, front yard areas.
So it's a 6 foot fence in the side or front yard. Can it be to the property line, or does that also have to be building line?
So in the flanking front yards, the front yard is any area between the property line and the dwelling.
Uh-huh.
Or from the right-of-way line in the dwelling. So in this case, you would have effectively 2 front yards, where most of this issue arises from because it is also a side yard in a sense.
Yeah.
So they have 2 large areas where they can't have 6 foot fencing.
And that's just because there's a road and does the roads currently apply to public and private drives? Like, for example, if you're in a corner lot, but the corner lot is on one side is a private drive, does that not apply because it's a private drive, or how does that work? Or does it just have to be worked out in the permitting process?
It would be worked out during the permitting process. I personally haven't had any instances on private drives, but I believe it would have to conform to the standards as they are today.
Okay. And so then the last question is about the permitting process. How confident, I mean, does it typically only happen on new construction, or does it happen, do we get a lot of permits for existing houses that just want to replace or add a fence, or, because I'm not confident, I mean, even though Pasco says you need to permit, it's pretty easy to build a fence without a permit, right? So, and there's probably lots of contractors that'll do it for you.
We do see it mostly on new construction, but there are a lot of properties that say we're annexed into the city that have fences that don't conform to this provision, and having those permits come in, then we would have to have them comply with the code. So there are lots of record that do have these issues.
And then finally, what's some neighbors remediation? Like, for example, if we had this, somebody does do this, we keep the code as it is, it gets missed in the permit review process, or they don't file a permit, and a neighbor comes back and says, I can't see to get out of my driveway anymore because they built an 8-foot or 6-foot fence all the way to the road. Is there a remediation, or are they just screwed?
There is. That would be through a complaint to code enforcement, and then at that stage, the neighbor would have to obtain the permit, which would require the fence to be moved towards compliance.
Okay, cool. That was my questions. Appreciate it.
Okay. So I have a question. I am looking at the 5th page in our handout, which, oh, yeah, ooh, wait, go back there. Yes. And I'm sorry, what were you trying to show us with the area that's circled there?
Right. So the way that those houses are laid out is that they don't form the entire frontage between two parallel or nearly parallel streets. So in this instance, the house to the south wouldn't be allowed to have their fence all the way out to their property line. They would have to set it back to the neighbor's building line, like it is in this case. So in this image, I'm just trying to show
Yeah.
that they're not able to extend all the way out due to the lot layout.
You're saying, what, where is the, what? Yeah. Were you talking about, yeah, can you go point, please? Because I'm not following the mouse.
So these two houses, they don't have
Yes.
from the two parallels. So this house's fence right here can't extend all the way out here.
Yes.
It has to match the building.
Yes, okay.
Is that what
Okay, thank you. No, I couldn't, the mouse was on something else, so I was a little confused. And that's what we want.
Right.
Right, okay.
Because if the fence is all the way out here, then
Then that obstructs someone backing out or someone walking. Yes, okay, good. That is what I wanted to know, and so this is what we are trying to move towards.
Right.
Okay, good. So you have my sign off on that.
I have a question. So what about if the house on the left were to put a fence in? Where would their, like the left corner lot, where would their fence line be? Would it be their own house or the other person's house?
with current standards, it would be to the building line of the house behind them, so their neighbor's house.
Okay. And where is the neighbor's house? Oh, that's the neighbor's house. Okay,
Yep.
sorry. It's a little surreal. I can't tell which part is the house and which is the grass. Okay. So they could go out to there.
Mhm.
Does that answer you, Commissioner Teal?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, does that give you the information that you need? Or do you need any more direction from us?
I believe we're looking for a recommendation on maybe the options that were proposed, if there's one that is most suitable to the Planning Commission.
Okay,
Or, Madam Chair,
yes.
if the commission is of some kind of consensus that there is no need for an amendment, that would also be appreciated. If there is an option that people favor, we can advertise for a public process and flesh this out. And maybe I can get some way to colorize my mouse so it's easier to see and follow.
So the mouse doesn't confuse me? Thank you. I prefer colored mouses, so that helps. So commission, does anyone have any strong sentiments about the options that are laid out on page 2 and part of 3?
So this is Commissioner Cochran. One of the things I observe is Madam Chair, I have the same challenge as you. This is really hard to visualize, and so, I think you guys did the best you could to try to help us visualize this. This was a really hard thing to visualize for me. And it becomes a really complicated issue with the current, with these options. And so I guess my tendency, based on what I've heard, is to try to make sure we have a pretty rigorous permitting and review process to catch these issues. And then obviously the ability to remediate and mitigate if they, if it creates safety issues or people are out of compliance. But I would tend to say keep it the same and hopefully mitigate through the permitting process. But it sounds like, I guess the thing I wanted to clarify, it sounds like the current process is where people feel there's overreach, or is it different than that? Was there a sense that the current process is too restrictive, or, and if the current process is really restrictive, would we make it even more complicated? Is it going to be seen as more overreach, or not sure?
Commissioner Cochran, this is Rick, and I'm not so sure that the complaints are driven by the code itself. I think there have been some lots created, as Mr. Hattori said, in the last 10 years that present some real problems in terms of not just fencing, but also driveways. And we have, I can think of a subdivision right now that has had to accommodate a diagonally placed major gas line easement in it, and it has created a street system where almost every corner lot is going to be a fencing issue. Would that have been anticipated better by staff, perhaps? We may have been able to kind of head that off at the pass, so to speak. But again, as described, and as we demand more strict conformance with our existing subdivision codes, this is probably a problem that is going away. I have jotted a note down to explore special conditions relating to fencing on corner lots that may be applicable either through a special use permit process or a variance, preferably a special use permit, because that does not involve the hearing examiner, who tends to be more black and white than maybe is appropriate in this circumstance. But that might be an option for the commission to also consider.
Yeah, I like that, because then it, you keep the process, try to do a really good job in the review, but then you have an option for special use if you have a extenuating circumstance or a future condition arises.
But that is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Mendez. So I'm with Commissioner Cochran. I'm not sure what's wrong with the current process. I think a lot of these issues can be worked with code enforcement. Some years back, I built a house on Desert Plateau, and I had the same situation as presented with a red circle. And I worked with them, and I built a 6-foot fence in the back. But in order not to obstruct the neighbor's view, they had me go down to a 3-foot fence all the way to the property line and around to the house, to the corner of the house. And that worked well. No complaints from the neighbors, satisfied code enforcement requirements. And so I think all these issues can be mitigated with close working relationship with code enforcement. So just my 2 cents.
Well, your 2 cents add up, so we need to hear that. So what I think I just heard you say, Mr. White, was that this problem is going to go away.
I hope I didn't say that. That might be an overstatement, but I think it's going to be minimized as time goes on.
So given that it's going to be minimized, do we need to go with option 3? Which maintain the current PMC and standards?
This is Commissioner Myram again.
I'm just wondering if there might be a benefit to having some code language in there for enforcement purposes down the road, or again, just what benefit that language could provide us that we don't have today. I'm sort of leaning toward option 3 at this point, but just wanted to see if there's any direct support for the other two.
There is conferring going on amongst staff, which you can't see.
I certainly think we can look into that. And I believe maybe next month we can bring something back to the Planning Commission for consideration again.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll, Madam Chair and Commissioners, we'll work on perhaps some wording that might be applicable through some kind of special permit, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's something halfway between some of the options that might also work. And in certain circumstances, I'm not sure what those might be right now, but it might provide an option at least that's, you know.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely open to that. I just don't want to see more of those driveways that have the high fences abutting them. So however you work that out, that sounds good. Any other thoughts we'd like to share with staff?
Just a question is, I like all the things that have been said, and it sounds like good next steps. If we did that and came back with, would it be another workshop, or would it be because I'm thinking the one thing we want to do is obviously get some feedback from perhaps development community or citizens that have views on this. But I think if we came back with some new options that maybe expand on the minimalist approach and then public hearing, we might get some good feedback that sway us one way or another too. So.
Heads are nodding. All right. Sounds good. We are moving on to other business, and I believe this is our update on the downtown Pasco master plan. Mr. Gonzalez.
Good evening again, members of the Planning Commission. So this is a little bit more of a summary of where we're at with the downtown Pasco master plan. You may remember a few months ago we provided an update on about 3 of our major planning efforts: transportation, housing, and downtown. So tonight's focus is just on our master plan effort downtown. So we went through the RFP and consultation selection back in the spring. We selected Framework Consulting. They're based out of Seattle, Washington, and as indicated in the staff report, they've got a wide variety and diverse experience working across the Pacific Northwest and nationwide on quite a few topics that really are going to make be of some value for our downtown area, specifically on design standards, zoning, building code, cultural arts and historic preservation, and arts and heritage planning. And so the selection of Framework was competitive selection, and we're very happy to be working with them along with BDS Consulting, who has a specific focus on public engagement, and Eco Northwest, which has a specific focus on more of the market analysis and feasibility side of things. So we really hope to kind of comprehensively approach our master planning effort. So on the next slide, you see a long list of what the scope of work will intend to move forward with. It's a variety of topics from obviously public engagement through community visioning and goals, the land use and urban design and urban form, so that's more of our built environment, transportation, circulation, and parking. In fact, we had a parking study completed about 2 months ago that will be used for this effort. However, noting that COVID has had a significant impact on parking, there will be some revisions and updates made to that. Development incentives. So the state recently, the state legislature recently allowed jurisdictions to take advantage of tax increment financing. So our consulting group will take a look to see how we can take advantage of that downtown. The state also allows cities to utilize the multifamily tax exemption. So as we intend to address housing and housing in and near our downtown, that might be another approach. We can also take a look at corridor incentives, density bonuses, et cetera. There's be a market study conducted on what exists downtown, along with some comparisons. And then the infrastructure planning will certainly be a big part of this. In fact, the Lewis Street corridor project, which ranges from 2nd to 5th Avenue, which is connected to the Lewis Street overpass intersection improvements or construction, they're all connected. Obviously, have a very significant component with regards to infrastructure. So we've got a lot of infrastructure and planning work being done in downtown Pasco today as we speak. And on the next slide is a brief summary of the timeline. It's expected to wrap up by about the springtime of 2022. So we've held our kickoff meeting internally with staff and our consulting partners. Currently, we are reviewing our public engagement plan, and once that's completed and ready for distribution, we'll send that out and then begin implementing that engagement plan. They will soon begin working on the existing conditions report that will be followed by a workshop with the public, and then a finalization of that existing conditions report. And throughout this entire process, Framework and staff is committed to providing both the Planning Commission, Council, and the public with updates along this entire process. And you can see that middle section with the draft plan with the open house. And then I think what's very critical is having eyes on the draft document, comments on that draft document, and those comments being legitimately addressed in the final document to be adopted by council later next spring. So on the next slide, Framework has identified some 3 overarching engagement goals. Engagement should be meaningful and continuous. Engagement should capture the diverse cultures and identities of our community, and a commitment to downtown Pasco stakeholders, and that's both through language and medium. So not just social media and newspaper print, but by walking door to door. So the city staff and our consulting team will certainly be pretty busy for the next year working on engaging our community downtown. On the next slide, the 3 phases of that engagement plan focus on building awareness, planning together, and staying engaged throughout the entire process. And then again, communicating updates and gaining feedback, meaningful feedback, to drive the final delivery of this master planning effort. Framework and their consulting team on the next slide has developed a tentative outreach schedule. So you can see right now we're finalizing the engagement plan. That'll be followed. They've also developed a specific branding material, which will certainly help not only with the planning effort, but as we begin to market downtown to both our local community and anyone else who feels so interested in downtown. A online public survey will be developed along with a visioning workshop later this winter. And then next spring, we'll have a open house, and obviously you can see the ongoing updates to both council, various boards, including the DPDA and other community groups downtown, and the Planning Commission. So this really is just meant to provide the Planning Commission with a summary of where this effort's at. There's a lot of attention and focus on it. And we're really excited to get, well, we're already started, so we're excited to keep moving forward on this. So happy to answer any questions from the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. This looks really great. And I'm excited to get those updates that are listed on that last slide. Anyone else? Any comments? Feedback? No? All right. Well, I think we're pretty good for a meeting which we weren't even sure was going to happen at 30 minutes past 6 o'clock. So with that, I think we are adjourned for this meeting. And we will see you next month in, gosh, October? Wow, October. All righty. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Stay safe.
Good night.
Thank you.